Dear Dr. Cekan, thank you for your time, and we are glad that you join our Smart Talks. You are inspiring businesswoman and a leader who is really active in supporting sustainable development and sustainable development goals. At the beginning, let me just introduce you to our audience. You are founder of Valuing Voices at Cekan Consulting and co-founder of Impact Guild. From January this year, you became a sustainability advisor consultant to Samboji for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. With our team, you have evaluated over $500 million of global development projects and consulted to 31 nonprofits, foundations, for-profits, and the public sector in 28 countries. Well done. Moreover, you have taught at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Harvard University, and were a research fellow at the University of Cambridge. You are also a mother, a Buddhist, love giraffes, and support their conservation. So let me start with the first question. Dr. Cekan, what inspired you to follow a sustainability path in your professional career?
Thank you so much for the invitation to be part of Be Smart Talks. Early on, when I worked as an investment banker and a management consultant, I realized that profit alone was not my path. So I started to work for nonprofits. I did my doctoral work looking at famine early warning systems, but it wasn't looking to criticize local people. When I was in Mali, in the deserts of Timbuktu, with the herders, asking them how they prevent famine. What do they know that we need to learn from them so that we can do our famine prevention work better? I realized that if they left me in that desert, I would be dead in 3 days. I am a Czech American raised in New York, and I would have died quickly. So I realized they were the experts. So the rest of my career has been focused around magnifying the voices of these experts in the field, the Africans, Asians, Latin Americans that know their context far better than we do, and we can add value, but we cannot do it for them.
Very inspiring, yes. Everyone has something what change like perspective, and we need to listen our inner voice. You know, it's very important also to listen our intuition, who we want to be and what is our in DNA, what is like nature.
Beautifully put. And also, you know, not everyone has had the extraordinary luck that I have had. To be able to travel to all these countries, to work with all these people, to learn all of this. I mean, I've been incredibly fortunate in my life.
Yeah, and what was maybe the most like experience which maybe change your attitude, change your point of view? What was there something like?
Yes, I do. I have one recently. So I founded Valuing Voices that looks at sustained impacts because I was consulting to the head of monitoring and evaluation at the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. They were doing amazing, I mean, world-class monitoring and evaluation of their projects, incredibly rigorous, incredibly thorough, and they care so much about tracking and monitoring and evaluating how much good they were doing. Really incredible work. And I had heard a presentation by American NGO Mercy Corps several years before that talked about post-project. So how long these amazing results, or at least, you know, amazingly measured results last. And so I said to the head of monitoring and evaluation, I said, so Cindy, why, where's the sustainability? Who evaluates sustainability? And she said, oh, no one.
Okay.
Said, that's not possible. And I went home and I sat down and I had a tea and a snack. My kids were at school. And I realized that I suddenly saw myself in the shoes of a particular woman in Nigeria. When I first started my work, I was writing grant proposals all over Nigeria. And I saw her. I saw her in the village, and I saw her in the village asking, when will they come back? Because I really met a woman who said, when will they come back, these people with the yellow trucks and the white trucks? And I realized that if no one is going back, then why in God's name are we doing what we say is sustainable development? There's no proof that it's sustainable. It could be, but maybe not. So that's how I founded Valuing Voices, because I saw myself in the shoes of that poor woman who had gotten help and then they left.
Yeah. Good intention, but we need to evaluate it. Yes, how impact we
proof.
Can create it.
Proof.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Yeah. It is a very important part of to be sustainable, yes, and act in a sustainable way and create also positive impact. So,
and if you could be creating positive impact, so how much for how long, where? And if you're not creating it, then it's okay. But learn what harm you're doing. And if you're doing harm, fix it. But you can't fix it if you don't know what's happening.
Yeah. So learn and improve.
Learn and improve.
Yeah, it's the journey. And on the journey, we want to be only better. So it's necessary to know about our results and try to achieve the best.
Yes, I just did this webinar and I'm doing it again in December. Sustaining exit for sustainability. So how much do we actually plan for sustainability when we start to fund and design and implement projects? And I say exiting for sustainability, ? Prove it or improve it.
Yeah, it's come together. It's the balance.
Yeah, we can't just keep assuming. A lot of development and a lot of impactful investing and a lot of CSR is based on an enormous number of assumptions. Yeah. So I'm a political economist. I'm like, show me. I'm all for it. And you could be doing unimaginable, unintended good, which we found again and again. So let's go back and see good that we didn't even expect to find. And then let's see maybe some negative things that we can stop doing.
Yeah, but we can fix it, you know, but first we need to know about it. Yes. So according to Valuing Voices, sustainability in CSR involves value creation through benefits creation for both companies and consumers. Can you tell us how a company can create such a model?
So there are, and it's also, I've got to fix it because it's not just companies and consumers, but it's also our own employees, right? So let's use the example where, you know, for your company as well as mine, the environment is very, very important, right?
Yeah.
So value creation, if we are using coal to fund, to fuel the electricity we use in our companies, then we are doing harm to the planet. If we switch to a green energy provider for our company's electrical needs, which I have in our apartment in Prague, in our cottage in the woods, that is fueled by wind and solar. It doesn't cost more. Now it even saves me money. Then we are able to do good in how our enterprise works. Using that same logic, if we are saying that we are improving CSR, we're doing some donations of wells in Africa, that is phenomenal. You're funding some wells. So you want to make sure for how long and how much good is that water doing. So you go find a local, you hire a local evaluation firm and you find out, is the water drinkable? Just because there's a well doesn't mean the water is drinkable. I've seen wells that are only used for animals' water needs because the water isn't good enough for humans. That's okay. Many people have cows and sheep and goats that are vital to their livelihoods. But we need to not assume that just because we are, helping people have water, well, how good? For how long is the water good? And then finally, for consumers, the value creation of our products. So there's a great example we'll talk about later, Tom's Shoes, where they have a model where you buy a pair of expensive shoes and they give a pair of shoes to Africa, Asia, Latin America, to kids there. And it is just terrific because the customer feels really good. They will pay more for the shoes so that the person in the developing country will get a pair of shoes. So I always thought it was a great model until I started looking into it. And looking into it, an evaluation, they teamed with an evaluation firm that over the long term looked at, so how much good do these shoes do? And they found out not that much. So we think the main problem is shoes. The main problem for these children is the parents can't pay the school fees because they actually would rather have cash. So just because we're willing to offer something, is it really most needed? And again, the Nobel Prize winning economists that just won the Nobel Prize last year, they found that people in the developing world are incredible managers of cash because they have so little of it. So they manage it far better than we do. They don't go buy a latte every day.
And what you could recommend for the shoe company? What maybe they can do better, according these results, according this evaluation?
Yeah. So it's not that the shoes are bad, but they need to be targeted well. So they actually have moved some of their donations to refugee camps where, yes, or to locations where children are actually walking very far to get to school. You need to know the local context, and you need to not assume that just because you have a thing to offer, that a thing is what people need most.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for this example, because I wanted to ask for the one example and you mentioned more than one. Thank you so much. You also mentioned that companies should transparently communicate their results and commitments to planetary sustainability. Why should they do so? And what is the value of such communication for the company itself and society?
So at Impact Guild, we believe it is now over $7 trillion of private investments that can be harnessed to do good on the planet. This is compared to something like $500 million in public and private foreign aid.
It's interesting. It's something what we can use for the good purpose.
So if we're generating income and there are investments, and this doesn't even count company or ongoing company operations, this is just investments. So there is a vast amount of private funding and, frankly, money circulating. So why don't we do good with it? Yeah. So not only is communication about we really care about the planet, IKEA has done phenomenal work in terms of really looking at their value chain. So how are they adding value at every point in time? So not only buying wood that is not causing harm to the world's rainforests, and they actually make sure it's really certified and really doing good, but also they've started recycling some of their products, so some of their furniture. So there is not the waste at the other end, right? Managing our waste is as important as managing the sources of the production. They have actually, in their canteens, they have started buying non-meat products because, especially cows, cause a great deal of harm to the planet. It's a very inefficient meat. They put out methane, they eat grass. It's just an inefficient and harmful cause of CO2 production and methane in the world, which are both a big problem. So when they started to look at, well, how much harm does the food we sell in our canteens do, and how can we replace it with something that does good? Then they started to shift how they do it, and they have a wonderful impact report. And they actually, you can go to IKEA with a much greater sense that the products I am buying is doing good. And I think we as consumers must be conscious consumers. We must look at what companies are doing good in the world, not just not doing harm. And having impact reports and caring about these things will lead us individually with our consumption doing greater good.
Yeah, because it affects our life, of course, when we are aware and we are conscious consumers, we help to change the future.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
We every day. So I chose to take the time to go find an electricity provider that uses green sources exclusively. It took some hours. It took a little bit of paperwork, a couple of hours for the paperwork. And I feel great because at least every time I turn on the lights, I'm not doing harm.
Yeah. And you have good feelings, yes, that you create some positive impact. And you are a good example. This is very important. If somebody is a conscious consumer, I believe that it helps influence surrounding around you, people around you.
Absolutely. I have solar panels on our cottage. I am flabbergasted why the whole world does not have solar panels. Yeah. Right? The government programs, both here and in the US, where I lived for many, many years, I have solar panels everywhere I go.
Yeah. So amazing. You start and you can be influencer in a good way, for the positive impact.
Not just companies. How are we doing it at home? What do we know about the companies we buy from? And I haven't even been, I'm only started on this journey. I mean, palm oil, sustainable palm oil. I still occasionally buy from Lay's, even though Lay's has not had a great record. Lay's chips, I'm like, oh, but I really like them. And then I'm like, oh, but these moral, ethical dilemmas, but they're not really sustainable. So I try to buy more from other chip producers, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about the effects of our money.
Yeah, sometimes we have this dilemma, but it's about, I believe that consumers have amazing power to change the course of our future and transform also the economy from the traditional way, just this only profit-oriented, to sustainable way, that it's also profit-oriented, but also to take care of share value, So this is important, how impact we create through our everyday choices. And what I would like to maybe mention here, that if company is active in sustainable development, supporting sustainable development, SDGs, it also affects also employees, because when you have good behavior in your work, you go to your home and you influence your home, your family.
Absolutely. Recycling in the office and recycling at home. And then, my whole family feels guilty when they don't recycle. And I mean, that's like my stepmother, my brothers. And whenever I go to their house and they're like, oh, we don't recycle this, but we do recycle this, right? I don't want to judge, but they just know how vital it is for me. I think one of my brothers bought a recycling bin just because he knew I was coming to visit him in Florida. But on the Valuing Voices site, I think we have a sustainable development goals cycle. So how are we actionable impact? So what are basic needs? The good, we have to do it at home, in our companies, and then in any projects that we do in the world. And we have to look at sustainable for how sustainable and for how long. So they're basic needs. So how are we improving the hunger, the health, the clean water and sanitation? How are we making sure our cities are sustainable? Those are basic needs. So we do that at home, we do that in the office, and if your boss doesn't do it yet, you can go and say to him, don't you want our company to function better? Or if you are a CEO, how are we improving? In the Czech Republic, we have stravenky, which are kind of like food coupons that people can go buy their lunch, which is marvelous. So they're making sure their employees are not hungry. It's a great tool for attracting new employees to the company. But then we also need to look at empowerment. The Czech Republic has among the worst gender balanced in terms of power in Europe. It's, I think, the bottom 3, right? So what is the balance? The SDGs talk about gender equality. So how many women work for you? And it's not just ladies who work on the assembly line or secretaries in the office. How many women are in the corporate suite? How many women are on your board?
Yeah, this is very important. And this is stakeholders of the company, what we are talking about. Also employees, also customers, also business partners, investors, general public, governments, non-profit organization, non-governmental organization. They're all part of the like group that company influence.
And absolutely.
Yeah. So
no, we call it an ecosystem evaluation. So we look at not just the entity, the nonprofit, and how sustainable their activities are. So for instance, in India right now with Gates, we're looking at what is the sustained impact of investments in advocacy, improving the lives of the marginalized, poor, or women. So so what is the impact that NGO is doing and all its partners are doing? How sustained is that? So if Gates went away tomorrow, would these nonprofits still be able to continue doing the work?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How robust are their organizations to be able to continue? So sometimes corporate CSR invests in let's help an orphanage. So they do some notebooks and some blankets and things. And I'm like, yes, as a one-off, that is great. But how are you helping that instead train the orphanage locally on helping to fundraise over the long term? Give them the skills to continue to attract CSR donations. Give them the skills to work to, train the orphans to do some work that they can continue to doing once they age out of the system. Think about the whole life cycle of the orphanage and not just, isn't it great we've given them blankets, pencils, and notebooks?
Yeah. This is something, what is long-term view of the positive impact creation.
Exactly. And then we also need to look at, in this SDG on valuing voices, we have a social responsibility page, and natural capital. So a colleague of mine just really made me realize in the international nonprofit world, if we're doing an agricultural project to improve yields, so farmers are able to grow more, or in the Czech Republic, there is the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs has business-to-business support. So where they are, having Czech businesses work with businesses abroad. So that's wonderful. So if we are laying pipes or helping the water systems in somewhere in Asia, in a country in Asia. So my question is, the pipes are great. We've improved how that company creates pipes, lays pipes. And I'm like, again, we are taking the water system and improving its efficiency, but how good is the potable water? who is using it? Is it getting out to the marginalized communities, or is this only going from the wealthy segment of the capital to the centers, like from parliament to the houses of the parliamentarians? Is it getting out to the slums? How can we start to advocate to make sure that that natural capital is reaching as many and doing as much good as we can?
Yeah, we need to be like curious, you know, and we need to want to know more and go deep. Yes, this is important. And
it's
how
responsibility. We're all humans. We can all do good while we're here. Let's do as much good as we can.
How important is it for a company to get feedback on their activities in sustainability and SDGs from their stakeholder? Because I ask this question because also we at SmartHead, we have a platform where companies have local company sustainability profile, and it also serves them to interact with their stakeholders to manage activities and also transparent communicate their activities towards their stakeholders, because it's very important if we want to be transparent in this way to also transparent communicate our results, our steps, our activities. So what do you think about it?
Oh, I cannot agree more. I think it's wonderful that you're doing this. And communications, one of the things that I think is most vital, there was a nonprofit who had some research money, and they found that their project was doing some good, but also doing harm.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot sugarcoat our results.
Mm-hmm.
We must admit this worked and this didn't work out as well. And this is how we are learning from our failure.
Yeah, exactly. And when you share it, it's also you share best practices and you try to show like examples and maybe inspiration, what is very important in this topic, because is new for some companies and every company can be better.
Absolutely. So one of the things it's just like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I absolutely loved the Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have in terms of asking their assembly line workers in the car industry, what can we improve? They didn't so much admit failure, but they're like, we can learn from you. We can be more efficient. We could do less harm on our assembly line, right? So companies, they have this program, I think it's like a hidden chef or something like that. This hidden boss, when he goes to work, he puts on a disguise, the CEO, and he goes down to the field, down to the ground staff to say, not tell me as CEO, but he actually goes, I just saw it, he was delivering packages in a package delivery company. So he went to deliver the packages and he's asking his drivers, God, this is really inefficient, don't you think? And the driver's like, oh, you have no idea. We're doing all this reporting to the management. I don't have time for it. I really, I need more time to deliver packages. There are all these systems that aren't working to support me. So if we can work in partnership with our employees, if we can communicate transparently, what's not working or what could be more effective? How could we do this more effectively? We're not in your shoes. And we do the same thing with our participants and partners in global development. How can we be more sustainable? How should we design the project to be more sustainable? Even though we leave, how can we make it, how can we make the project as participant-led, as partner-led as possible from the beginning?
Yeah. And Dr. Cekan, you state that projects feeding into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals may not be sustained over the long term, and we must return to evaluate what could be sustained and what emerged ex post. Could you please explain further what you mean by this statement? I know that you mentioned it before, but maybe I would like to listen your thoughts and your experience.
Thank you so much. I love this work. Thank you so much for talking to me about it. So we have spent $5 trillion in just public funding between Europe and America and Japan. OECD, the UN statistics track, $5 trillion since 1945. Mm-hmm. 1.7 trillion since the year 2000. Mm-hmm. And 99% of the time, we don't go back and see what has been sustained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we talk about sustainable development goals, and I think they're wonderful in terms of focusing on certain activities. So how are we more empowered? How are basic needs met? How are we using natural capital? How are we making sure that things are governed well? How are we making sure we're not adding to climate change, but instead we're improving climate change? But there are millions of projects that we do. We spend 1, 3, 5, 10 years doing, and then we leave. And then we never go back to see if any of those results are sustained. Mm-hmm. And when we do go back, because I've done 7 of them and I have 40 on my website that actually have gone back, we find that the results are mixed. Mm-hmm. Even large multilaterals make all these assumptions about the government sustaining things. But if you're poor enough to get a grant, can you sustain millions of euros worth of funding? Probably not. Mm-hmm. So we need to learn what has been sustained, why, how, and fix, and focus all of our design and implementation efforts on what people were actually able to sustain and why did they choose to sustain those things and not. There's a wonderful project that I evaluated in Niger about 4 or 5 years ago, mm-hmm. and 4 years ago. And we went to look, and they had agriculture project improving how crops are done and linking to private sector. So the private sector would buy the crops from the farmers. And the NGO decided, and they did health programming, and the NGO decided how they would, that they would start to collaborate halfway through the 5-year project. So 2.5 years in, they were like, how is the government going to take this over? Mm-hmm. And again, we can do this for, if you're a company and you're doing CSR, who's going to take over what you're doing? Not just good enough to send the money or send the products, or, what is the technical assistance you can continue to provide? So they actually this NGO partnered with the Ministry of Agriculture. They started taking over the project during the implementation to make sure it was sustained. And amazingly, people were feeding themselves 30% more 3 years after the project ended. Mm-hmm. With no more inputs from the international NGO or USAID, because the local government had put some of the costs into their budget, because the farmers were growing so much more and they were linked to the private sector. So the private sector to go buy the crops, mm-hmm. which is phenomenal, right? On the other hand, there were a variety of activities that stopped working. Breastfeeding. Women weren't breastfeeding their children well. They'd gone back to the old habits because it wasn't designed well for mm-hmm. the ministry to take over. And there were some amazing innovations. The communities loved the health center so much mm-hmm. to ensure safe childbirth that they themselves contributed to the upkeep through their own funding. Every time there was a wedding or a baptism, everyone had to bring money to that and give money to that health center. For every guest who came to the village, you have to leave like a $2 tip so that the village could continue to sustain and maintain that health center. I mean, just amazing work when you go back and you evaluate.
Yeah. And let me ask next question about Impact Guild, where you are co-founder. It's Geneva-based NGO with a mission to scale measurable and meaningful impact investment through the transformation of development non-profits programming plus approach. Can you share with us why you decided to start this NGO?
Sure. So, there are NGOs that have desperate need for funding. Mm-hmm. There are impact investors that say they do impactful investments, but they are primarily investing in very large companies locally, and they are claiming to have sustainable impact. And I'm like, well, we should probably put these together. So with 3 other colleagues, we co-founded this. And so I'll give you an example. We advised a company in West Africa whether they should be doing an investment into a yogurt company. The local yogurt company in Burkina said they were really improving a lot of the SDG indicators. They were decreasing hunger. They were decreasing poverty through the production of their yogurt using local cows. Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Right? So you think, of course, they're doing local. They're Africans, or of course, we're doing good in the world. Maybe not. Mm-hmm. Because the yogurt, you have to really use local evaluators or know about the local area. So the pots of yogurt they were making, which is very bio, terrific green yogurt. I mean, not green, it was white yogurt, but it was, kind of using local cows that were organic feed and all that. But when a pot of yogurt is €1, the European company was like, oh, that's so cheap. Now, in Burkina Faso, where they make €1 a day,
mm-hmm. It's not so cheap.
Euros a day. Are you going to use all of the money you have made that day to buy one small pot of yogurt? Mm. Were they really addressing hunger? Mm. So they were addressing poverty of their staff. So they were taking on 100 staff to improve this line of yogurt production. So yes, you can do that. But and they were buying more yogurt from the herders, so you can make the claim of that. But you have to think through the impacts. Mm-hmm. And you can't just assume, yes, if I'm going to invest in a Burkina Faso yogurt company, of course I'm meeting all the SDGs. Maybe not.
Maybe, again, good intention, but it's necessary to evaluate, to measure impact. Yes.
Absolutely. And to really look at the claims. Mm-hmm. Right? We can claim lots of things, but really drill down and make sure, because you really actually want to do the real good that you can prove.
Of course. And be focused also for local, for local needs. But it's also the topic of sustainable development is a world topic. It's a global topic, but we need also to focus for local needs, local conditions, and because this is necessary. Because the example about the yogurt, yes, for example, in Europe, €1 for the yogurt, it's okay, but maybe in Africa, it's not so easy to buy it and support.
Well, the elites were buying it.
Yeah.
So the very wealthy Burkinabe were buying it. The very wealthy Lebanese traders that lived in the capital were buying it. This was great for the expats, the NGO staff that were getting great salaries to work there. They were so happy at the bio yogurt. But it wasn't, you just can't assume that just because they can buy it, it's getting down to address hunger.
Yeah. And the last question, Dr. Cekan, is very important for us because we want to share positive examples, best practices. What are the free activities in sustainability that companies can start doing right away that you would recommend to any company anywhere in the world?
It's phenomenal. Love this question. Love it. So I think we really need to take apart our idea of what impact is. Make sure we understand what we mean. For many companies, impact is simply synonymous with the word results. Oh, we're having results. Isn't it wonderful? It does not mean that we are having a measurable impact, right? just because we are investing in Burkina Faso, can we assume that we're having an amazing impact? Maybe. If we are giving money to an orphanage, that is terrific. How is it changing lives? So the one question is, how am I actually changing lives? Another question is, for how long? And then I think we really need to ask our employees and our customers, do focus groups with employees and customers and say, what is the good in the world that you think our company can do? Mm-hmm. We provide pipes for piped water. What is the good? And engage our employees, our staff, our stakeholders, our board members, and our customers, and say, what is the good you want to do, and how can we work together to do it? And listening, like my company is called Valuing Voices at Cekan Consulting, because we value the voices of all the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. So how do we work together to do good? Because as the Tom's Shoes example, as the IKEA example shows, people want to do good. How do we help them maximize the good that we can do together? That will help the bottom line for profits. That will help employee satisfaction. That will help a good feeling that when we write that CSR report, we actually can tangibly prove the good that we're doing in the world.
Amazing. Oh, it was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this. Thank you very much, Dr. Cekan, for such inspiring thoughts. And I believe that this interview will open new perspective in sustainability to many companies and business leaders. One more time, thank you so much.
I hope so. I hope so. It's been great. Thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation and for your doing these talks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.